You know, after 9/11, it was said that this gave us an opportunity to go after Iraq. The plans had been in place for a good many years, matter of fact, more than a decade, to go in and have regime change in Iraq. And yet 9/11 had nothing to do with it. And there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And there were no weapons of mass destruction, but the hype built into the media and through the politicians and drumbeats of war said that we have to go to war. And then the worst part of all that is we went to war under the wrong set of circumstances. Why don't we as a nation demand that we look to the Constitution and never go to war unless it's declared by the people through their members of Congress? Now they say that if we don't stay there, things will be chaotic. They're pretty chaotic, and we know it, and it's costing a lot of lives, ours and theirs, and yet who says it'll be chaos if we leave? You know, it's those same group of people who said that when we go in there, it'll be a cakewalk, and there won't be a problem, and that will welcome us with open arms, and that everything will be paid for by the oil. You know, what happened, everybody knows what happened. It didn't quite go that way. But those same individuals are telling us if we leave, there's going to be chaos, and we're supposed to believe them and keep our troops there. That is what happened in the 60s when I was in the Air Force. I was in there for 5 years, and they kept saying, you know, if we ever leave Vietnam, you know, it'll be a disaster. There'll be radical communists. Communism will spread. There'll be a domino theory. It didn't happen that way. I mean, they became capitalistic. What has been achieved with Vietnam in these later years after we left could not be achieved with war. It was achieved in peace because we did what the founders advised. We started talking to the Vietnamese. We started trading with them. We started traveling back and forth. And now we invest over there and their president comes over here. And what about China? You think China became more communistic after we started talking to them? No, they got a whiff of capitalism. Now they're our banker. So, if we want a strong nation, if we want a strong economy, if we want a strong dollar, we don't allow the Chinese to become our banker and that they own us, because we today can't even fight this war without borrowing money from the Chinese. We have to borrow $800 billion a year from foreigners, a lot coming from East Asia, from Japan and China and also Saudi Arabia. I mean, we don't have enough money. We have to pay, even on our national debt, $1.4 billion every day just for the interest. Used to be said, oh, we pay that to ourselves. That's not true. We pay that to a lot of foreigners, and we pay it to our Federal Reserve System, and they don't deserve it either. We are on is not very good for the future of this country, and it's because we have strayed from our fundamental premises. We have strayed from our Constitution, and there's no reason why we can't go back and do the right things. It's not like we don't know what is right. It's just that too many Americans thought they could get a free lunch, and there is no such thing as a free lunch, and this is what the American people are waking up to today. A $9 trillion national debt, an obligation of $60 to $70 trillion on all the entitlement programs. We owe foreigners $2.7 trillion, and so it's coming to an end. And tragically, our good jobs have gone overseas because of our mismanagement here. Mismanagement of our dollars, our trade agreements that don't serve our purposes. And now today, we are at the mercy of others. And something has to give. And I believe this is the reason at the grassroots level we are getting such strong support for this campaign. I think they're ready for the return to constitutional government. You know, the best way we can solve our problems and the easiest place where we can cut the spending is overseas. I think we can get a coalition for that. We don't need to attack the programs that have been developed, maybe unwisely here in this country where so many people are dependent, but quite frankly, we can work our way out of that. But we have to save money somewhere, and to me, it's overseas. What we need to do is not only expand that war, quit expanding that war in the Middle East. We don't need to go into Pakistan. We don't need to persist and occupy two countries that we're involved in nation building. What we need to do is get out of there and come home. But not only there, we need to come home from Korea, we need to come home from Japan, and we need to come home from Europe. We need to spend all that money here in this country. We as taxpayers have been taxed in order to go and try to force our way around the world, and we bomb a lot of countries and destroy a lot of infrastructure, all in the name of doing good. At the same time, as soon as we think we have control of the country, then we get taxed again to rebuild their bridges and their infrastructure. At the same time, our own bridges are falling down. I say, let's take care of our own bridges here at home. When we come home, whenever we come home around the world, whether it was a time when we came home from Korea or Vietnam, too often our government is so anxious to have us there. They entice us to go into the military, and sometimes they draft us. But we go and we serve and we do our very best. But at the same time, too often our troops are neglected when they come home. They need a much better care and treatment once our veterans get back here home. I object to that. If I am ever in a position where I can do anything about that, believe me, all the records will be open and we will do our very best to find every one of them. But you know, they say that it sounds to me like you're an isolationist. You want to come home and wall yourself off, and it's exactly the opposite. It's the opposite of isolationism. Isolationism is when you don't talk to people, you don't trade with people, you build walls around, and that I don't believe in. The founders really advised commerce. The responsibility of regulating commerce with foreign nations was put in the hands of the Congress. It was not to be put in the hands of NAFTA or CAFTA or WTO. That's the part that I reject. But sometimes people misinterpret the idea of having strength. Sometimes they think strength is only pushing and shoving. But sometimes it takes strength to resist, to do the wrong things. Sometimes it says stand up to evil by saying you have to do it the right way, you have to set a standard. So some would come, say that this sounds like being weak. But right now, I think we're weak because we do things that we shouldn't do, and we're weakening our moral fiber in this country. Now, we are not seen well around the world. We are seen as a country that has adapted to torturing. And that's not part of what America's about. Secret prisons, and the elimination of the Posse Comitatus Act, the elimination of the Insurrection Act, the idea that we can be spied on without search warrants. That doesn't take strength to do that. You need strength to resist the temptation to fall into those traps of using government force to try to coerce the people to behave as somebody thinks they should. We need to allow the people to take care of themselves. Keep my train of thought if you do that all the time. But I want to mention something about the economy. The economy, I am convinced, is a lot worse shape than they are willing to admit in Washington, D.C. For instance, they measure inflation by the CPI. And the CPI, they say, is going up 2%. So that means if you're under Social Security, then you get a 2% increase. And yet the inflation rate, the cost of living increase for people in retirement and trying to live on Social Security might be 8 or 10%. And so their standard of living is going down. And that's why people don't feel good about what's happening. If you're trying to make a living and you're in a low middle income bracket and your income doesn't keep up with the cost of living, then you feel like you're being threatened. So then it's no doubt that people are uncertain about the economic future. And today, on a daily basis, we're seeing statistics where they're finally coming around to admitting there's something wrong in the economy. But this should not be a surprise to us. This is what happens when you debase a currency. When you destroy a currency, literally what happens, there's a transfer of wealth from the middle class to the wealthy. In countries that debase their currencies on a routine basis, namely a country south of ours, they don't have a middle class, a very small middle class, a large poor class, and a modestly sized rich wealthy class. But the middle class gets wiped out. So this is a characteristic of destroying the currency. And this is also the reason that it leads to political chaos. The worst, of course, in the 20th century was the political chaos of the runaway inflation in Germany after World War I. And it led to a lot of problems. What happens, though, is there too many people think that they can have this free lunch, and they believe that the politicians will take care of them. They're not wanting and demanding their freedom and self-reliance. They say, well, the government is the safety net, and the government's always going to take care of me, and therefore they resort to the government. And for a while, a rich country can do that for a long time, because the country has a great deal of wealth, and there's a lot of momentum, and taxes can be raised, and then there's a limit to how much they can raise taxes. But nobody wants to slow up on the spending. Everybody's intimidated, afraid, if I don't vote for all these special programs, I'll get kicked out of office. So they come along and they say, well, we better borrow money. And then they have this scheme where we spend money overseas and we borrow it back, and we buy this oil and they loan the money back to us. And then finally they don't want our dollars as much. And then the government, then what do we do when we still come up short? We resort to the Federal Reserve System, and then literally we allow them to go and print the money when they need it. And guess what? They do. And unfortunately, that lowers the value of the dollar. And they tell me, and they've told me this for 30 years, don't talk about monetary policy. It's really complex and nobody understands it. One thing I have discovered during this campaign, a lot of people understand it, a lot of people care about it, a lot of people know about the Federal Reserve System, and they want something done about it, and they'd like to see the Federal Reserve System